Tēnā koutou katoa. As I grew older, I started to see that my father was very abusive and aggressive to my mum. I used to just throw myself in between them fighting with dire consequences to myself.
My mum was the one who was quite abusive and you know.
So in about 19, I met this wonderful lady. She was only 16 at the time, and I fell in love with her.
We got married when I was 17 and he was 19. I thought, oh, here's a way out for me, you know, from home, and here's somebody that loves me and will look after me. But it didn't end up like that.
And when I got married, I vowed that I'd never do what my father did to me, to my mother. And not very far along away, I started beating up, the very one I love.
My family knew it was happening, the violence that was happening. I had 2 young children. Nobody did anything. He would promise that it would be better. So I always believed him, because that's what I wanted, But it didn't change. It got worse as the years went on.
In 1981, something amazing happened for me, and that my father contacted me. He started by saying, Michael, I've come here today to ask you if you can find it in your heart to forgive me for being a rotten father. He never ever said words like that. And I was really, really moved, and it wasn't long after, I embraced my father, and even with tears and that, and he was really thanking me for forgiving him. I was really happy, we're going to finally have a good relationship with my father. And it wasn't 3-4 days later, I got a call from Wellington. My brother phoned me and he said, Mike, Dad's dead. At my father's funeral, there was my brother, my younger brother, sharing the love of God and the peace of God. And I was thinking, man, how can I turn him off? That night, I went home and I had this encounter. It was a dream. It really frightened me. And so they were praying for me at the back of our house. Next moment, I felt something change for me. And it was at that moment my brother Hayward leant over me and says, Mike, do you want to receive Jesus Christ as your Lord? And I said, yes.
He said to me, he's been forgiven. When you've been abused for that long, you don't want to hear that. How can somebody be forgiven instantly like that? So I sort of become bitter and angry, and I got to the point where I hated him. I wanted to make him miserable. I wanted him to pay for what he did. So I used to go and punch and kick him in the head.
And on the day I got received Christ, baptised in water and baptised in the Holy Spirit, I gave up drinking alcohol. I gave up even smoking cigarettes. I gave up drug taking. And I gave up being, violent to my wife. I gave up being unfaithful to my wife.
I never saw the changes because I didn't want to see them. So I continued to behave how I was behaving towards him. It wasn't until one day I saw him on his knees, and he had my 2 daughters with him, because he used to try and pray with them a lot, and just something snapped, and I went in there and I kicked him in the head, and I punched him, and and I was doing all these things to him, but then it just got to the point where I couldn't stand it anymore. I went to the room, I got his gun out of the cupboard, and I walked out to him, and he was still on his knees praying, him and the girls. And I just stuck it to his head, and I just said to him, get off your knees, don't pray for me, or I'll blow you away. And
at that moment I thought, now do I stand up and be quiet, or do I carry on praying? And I chose to stay on my knees and start praying even more.
And then my daughters were screaming and crying, and they were begging for their dad. And it was through that, if they probably hadn't have been there, I probably would have done it. But because of them begging for him, I realised I'd crossed that boundary. So I threw the gun on the bed and I just took off. I just couldn't stand to be there anymore. And I was at my mum, and I must have been about 2 weeks, I think, there. And then just a small voice, and this voice said, "Is Mike smoking? No. Is Mike drinking?" And I'm battling myself here and talking to myself, and I thought, no. And then it says, "Is Mike hitting you?" No. "Is Mike sleeping around?" And I went, no. I thought, wow, for a whole year, and I hadn't seen it because I didn't want to see it, and he hadn't hit me, even though everything I'd done to try and provoke him to do it. He didn't react in that. And I thought, wow, Mike has changed. I actually picked up the phone and I rang him and I says, "Mike, I want to come home. I want what you have." Not that I knew really what it was at that time, but I want to, I want your God.
When Penny and I came back, she really became just as in love with God just as myself, and for her too. All the drinking, even the cigarettes and the drugs, they all went, and also the violence. I'm so thankful for that.
Even when I did get together, there was still some hurts that needed to be dealt with, and I just remember praying, and I says, "Lord, give me a new love for Mike." And he did. He answers our prayers. I don't think we would have been together if God wasn't part of our life. And then as I grew, I understood what God's forgiveness was, what it meant, and I understand what God's love is, And since he's been a Christian, I know he loves me.
But my whole life's been changed. My wife's life has been changed. My brother Hayward and I are close as. Jesus has reconciled my marriage, reconciled my relationship with my brother and even my father. And of that I'm so thankful.